Welcome to Maxara.
When I was 19, a friend and I decided to hike through a stretch of forest near my hometown. It wasn't an official trail, more like logging roads that cut deep into the trees, the kind of place where you could walk for hours and not see another soul. We left around 5 p.m. in late summer, planning to camp out overnight. For the first hour, it was calm, the usual cicadas, crunch of leaves underfoot, golden light bleeding through the trees. But as the sun started dipping, we noticed something odd. In the dirt beside the path were footprints, bare feet, adult-sized, going the same direction as us, but the steps were uneven, like whoever it was had been dragging their feet. We laughed it off at first, joked that some forest hippie was wandering barefoot. But then, about half a mile later, we saw more prints. Only this time, they weren't just walking straight. They circled trees, stopped, then started again. At one point, the prints formed a perfect ring, like someone had walked in circles again and again. That's when the woods got quieter. No insects, no birds, just stillness. We set up camp before it got fully dark, made a fire, cooked some food. We were trying to shake off the weird vibe, but every so often we'd hear twigs snapping just beyond the firelight. Not heavy steps, light, careful, like someone trying not to be heard. Around midnight, I woke up to my friend shaking me. He whispered, "There's someone out there." I sat up and listened. Sure enough, there were footsteps, slow, deliberate, just beyond the ring of trees around our clearing. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it toward the sound. For half a second, I saw them. A man, thin, pale, shirtless, despite the cold. He ducked behind a tree the moment the light hit him. We froze. Neither of us said anything. After a few minutes, the steps faded away into the woods. We didn't sleep. At first light, we packed up fast and started heading back the way we came. But not 10 minutes into the hike, we stopped dead. On the path, in the middle of the trail, was a fresh pile of stones stacked into a pyramid, about 3 feet tall, and on top of it, a dead crow, its wings spread neatly, like it had been placed there on purpose. We didn't stick around. We bolted down the trail, barely stopping for breath. When we finally reached the car, we turned back once before leaving. In the distance, between the trees, we saw him. Standing, watching, barefoot, and smiling. Back in college, a group of us went camping in the national forest just outside town. We weren't hikers or survivalists, just kids who wanted a drink where no one could call the cops. The first night was normal. We set up tents, lit a fire, passed around cheap whiskey. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I woke up because I thought I heard someone whistling. Not a tune exactly, just 2 notes over and over. I figured it was one of my friends wandering off to piss. The next day, we found something. About 50 yards from our tents, in the clearing where we'd parked, there were boot prints circling the cars. None of us wore boots. It spooked us, but we shrugged it off. Hunters, someone said. Rangers. We tried to laugh about it, but when night came again, the forest went so quiet, it felt like the air had been sucked out. Even the bugs stopped. That same whistle came back, 2 notes, this time closer. One of the guys shouted into the woods, "Who's out there?" The whistling stopped. We didn't sleep much. The morning after, one of the girls, Rachel, swore she'd heard footsteps right outside her tent. She said whoever it was crouched down so low she could hear their knees popping. Nobody else admitted it, but I'd heard it too. By the third day, we were done. We packed up before noon and hiked back to the lot. But when we got there, the cars weren't empty. In the back seat of mine, pressed against the window, was a pile of pine needles tied together with twine. Sitting on top of it was a rabbit's skull, clean, like it had been boiled. Nobody wanted to admit what we all knew. Someone had been in the camp with us. Close enough to watch, close enough to leave things behind. We drove out in silence. That was years ago. But here's what keeps me up at night. Sometimes, when I park my car outside my apartment, I still find pine needles caught under the windshield wipers, even when I haven't been anywhere near the woods. And last week, I swear I heard that same two-note whistle right outside my bedroom window. I was hiking solo last fall in a state forest about 2 hours from my university. I had an old paper trail map and one of those cheap GPS apps, and between the two, I thought I'd be fine. The first 3 hours were uneventful. A few squirrels, some deer, nothing strange. But around late afternoon, I noticed a path that wasn't on my map. Narrow, almost overgrown, but clear enough that people had used it before. I should have ignored it, but curiosity got me. The path curved downhill for what felt like a mile, then flattened into a kind of valley. That's when I realized two things. My GPS had stopped updating. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No wind, no insects, nothing. At the base of the path, I came across a small structure. Not a cabin, not a shack. It looked like a hunting blind, except wrong. It was built from mismatched wood, leaned at an angle, and had no door. I approached cautiously. Inside were old objects, not garbage, but not things you'd expect in the woods either. A row of shoes, all children's sizes, lined neatly against one wall. A backpack, newer looking, with a university patch from a school about 3 states away. And in the center, a table made of stacked logs. On top of it was a Polaroid photo, weighed down by a rock. The photo was of someone sitting in that exact spot. Inside the structure, same table, same wall of shoes, except the person's face had been scratched out with something sharp. I backed out slowly, my chest tightening. My first thought was, maybe this is some creepy art project, or hunters messing around. But then I noticed footprints in the dirt outside, bare feet, more than one set, and small, like kids. They trailed into the trees and disappeared. I decided to turn back. Only problem was, the path wasn't where I thought it was. I retraced my steps for almost half an hour, circling the same trees, until I stumbled back into the valley again. And this time, the photo on the log table was different. It was me, standing at the entrance of the structure. My face not scratched out. My body went cold. I forced myself to stay calm and found a slope that led uphill. After nearly an hour of pushing through brush, I finally reconnected with the marked trail. The forest sounds slowly returned. Birds, insects, wind. By the time I reached my car, the sun was down. When I looked back one last time, I saw something that made me lock my doors immediately. Stuck under my windshield wiper was another Polaroid. Same grainy film, same scratch marks. This one showed me from behind, walking back to my car. I I grew up near the edge of a state forest. My dad was a hunter, so I was in the woods more than I was anywhere else. I knew every trail, every tree line, every dip in the hills. That's why what happened never sat right with me. Because if anyone should have been able to explain it, it should have been me. It started one night in late October. I'd gone out to clear my head, took the long trail past the creek. The moon was out, just enough light to move without a flashlight. The air was quiet, the kind of quiet you only get in the woods, like the world's holding its breath. About half a mile in, I noticed something off. The trail looked different. The trees thinned out in a way I didn't remember. At first, I thought I'd taken a wrong turn, but when I looked down, the dirt path was still there, packed down with years of boots, except the ground was scattered with white stones, perfectly round, smooth, and placed exactly a foot apart, like stepping stones, except they weren't flat. They were just sitting on top of the dirt. I stopped. My first thought was kids messing around, maybe some kind of trail marker. But the stones weren't from around here. The creek didn't tumble rocks that smooth. They were too uniform, too deliberate. I told myself to ignore it and kept walking, crunching leaves beside the path instead of stepping on the stones. But the deeper I went, the more wrong it felt. The trees pressed in close, branches hanging lower, like the woods were narrowing behind me. Then I saw the lights. Not bright, not like flashlights, just faint glows ahead, like fireflies that didn't flicker. A dozen or so hanging low to the ground. I crouched down, heart pounding, listening. No movement, no voices, just those lights. When I finally stepped closer, I realized they weren't fireflies. They were jars, mason jars, lined up along both sides of the path, each one with a candle burning inside. The flames didn't smoke, they didn't waver. I froze. There was no way someone had come out here, set all this up, and just left. That's when I heard it, the sound of something moving in the trees, slow, heavy. A step, then a pause, another step, coming closer but never close enough to see. I backed away, every instinct screaming at me to run, but the path behind me looked darker than it should have been, like the woods themselves were pushing me forward. And then, just as sudden as it started, the sound stopped. The woods went still. I forced myself to look ahead. The jars, the lights, they were gone, vanished. No glass, no wax, no soot, just empty dirt. I don't remember running back, but I must have. My lungs burned when I stumbled out by the creek. When I finally looked down, my boots were covered in dirt and white dust, like chalk. The next day, I went back with my dad. Same trail, same creek, except there were no stones, no jars, just trees and dirt, like it had always been. But here's the part that keeps me up. When we got home, my dad emptied his hunting pack. At the bottom, under his gear, was one of those smooth white stones. I never told him what I'd seen, and I haven't gone back into those woods since.